Clink, and I'm speaking with Edward Brown of the Core Edge Image and Charisma Institute. Core Edge specializes on the impact of charisma on society. Today we're going to discuss the charismatic community, how a community cultivates charisma. Hello, Mr. Brown.
Hello, Tana. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
In the past, you said you got your start in charisma from the influences of your family and community. Can you explain these two influences?
Well, I would say that when I was thinking about what I want to do the rest of my life in terms of body work that I can create that was going to astound the world with my brilliance, I went back to my childhood and saw that charisma was always a part of my dynamic in terms of my experiences. And my father's side of the family was the charismatic side of the family. They were the bigger-than-life, animated, funny, profound. All those individuals in my family had that way about them that engaged people. So I learned up close and personally how charisma could impact people based on funny stories, profundity, and good looks. The family was the forefront of my charisma, but the community was where it was cultivated. I grew up in a place in New Haven, Connecticut we called it Out the Way. But it was a projects that was out the way. It was farther from downtown New Haven. And it was made up of three big complexes, Brookside, Rockview, and Oriental Gardens. And so with that enmeshed mass of great fun numbers of people, basically we got along. And once upon a time, early on, we were like separated. You know, you look Oriental Gardens, you're Brookside, you're Rockview. But as we evolved and grew and saw ourselves out the way as a collective agenda, we all were out the way. So that community with the colorful figures, the walks, the distinction, laid the foundation for me cultivating the idea of charisma. So now I talk about it from the vantage point of my family and that experience in Connecticut, out the way.
Okay. Specifically, who were some of the influences from your community and why?
There were so many people. I mean, you're talking about thousands of people in a community, so everyone had their own personality and own distinction. But if I had to say there were three people who, in that community, impacted me to this day, it was a guy named Gene Myers. Gene Myers was from the Myers family, and I can say he was the only guy I admired who was the same age I was, or I am. And his family was from fourth grade all the way to adulthood. They were respected, they were athletes, they were smart. Women liked them, guys respected them. It was kind of like, it's like you looked at them like, wow, how could they have all that power since fourth grade? And I asked him one day, I said, I think it was Neely, my next brother up from Gene. I said, man, how did y'all get reputation since the fourth grade? I'm talking about reputation throughout the whole, out the way as well as New Haven. He said, yeah, man, I think they're from South Carolina originally. And he said, we moved from South Carolina to Connecticut. I guess landed in Rockview. And he said, we just came and started kicking behind in terms of people disrespecting whatever. And then, you know, you beat up, keep people up, let people know how you feel, and then you maintain that stature. You don't have to fight long because people doesn't know, you know, who you are. And they came from, had other residual effects of family, other places in Connecticut. So they just grew that way, and therefore people respect them. So they had a sense of charisma, a sense of respect, and a sense of aura within the whole family that astounded me to this day. Another person who is no longer with us, he passed some years ago, Sneaky Dixon. He was this guy who was buffed. He had a big afro at the time. And when you looked at him, he seemed like a relic of 1970s, so we're talking about years ago, 25, 30 years ago. But he was this guy who, when you saw him and the way he talked, the way he carried himself, the reputation he had throughout the whole Connecticut, probably New York, it was like astounding. He was this one kind of personalities that kind of captured your imagination. And I would say a girl, or at the time now a woman, April Johnson was that Jane Kennedy type. She was that beautiful starlet in the hood that most men just dreamed about. And she knew it. She felt it, you know, as a girl. But it told me, based on knowing her and seeing her every day, that if you were cool enough and smart enough and successful enough, down the line you can have a woman like that. So I think she set the bar in terms of the iconic aspect of that level of beauty in a woman and the desire that goes along with it.
How do these people or similar characters influence your body of work on charisma?
when I started asking myself what I want to do the rest of my life and what body of work that I could actually develop and create, I think those individuals came to mind because that's all I knew. And no one speaks from that community in terms of how they develop the humor, how do they interact with people to get what they want, and how they maneuver on the world stage. When you don't have money, you don't have education in instance, and don't have the connections. And so they use their wits, their willpower, and their personality to get what they want. And so from that vantage point, I said, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. I can use my family's background, I can use my community background, I can use all my experiences and build a body of work until I die. Because that's where my passion lies, and that's where a great deal of who I am today came from. So all those dynamics have fused together to create the body of work that I'm currently doing.
What impact did growing up so close to New York have on your community and charisma?
Obviously, the Big Apple influences the world. And coming from Connecticut, 45 minutes from New York City, the personalities in New York and the personalities in Connecticut are similar because of our closeness. Whereas when people moved from New York to Connecticut and moved in our projects, it was not like they took over. They kind of infused themselves and they became just another individual in that project because in many respects, the bigger personalities were in the projects where we were. So the connection of New York being high energy, the standard and trendsetter for the world, we were part of that because we're so close to it. And whatever happened in New York affected us directly because we're so close to New York. In proximity, but also in personality.
Many artists glamorize the seedy or perceived negative side of the inner city. How did you develop a scholarly body of work from that same source?
Well, I say I'm the bookworm. When people talk about who they thought I was back in the day, I was talking to Chico Jackson on Facebook recently, another brother, good brother, and he was saying that he thought I was a funny, crazy guy. And when people say that, I'm like, what? Because I saw myself as an introspective bookworm, never got high, never experienced marijuana, at one point never cursed, and was always in the books, an athlete. And so when they talk about me being crazy and funny, I'm like, me? And then when I hear about girls like me, they like me? So it just how you see yourself retrospectively and how they saw you is totally different. So me being a bookworm, and since I'm not going to have the aspiration of being a football player or athlete in other sports or an entertainer, the only thing I had always an affinity for was my brains, my intellect. And so I said, well, how can I fuse all the information that I experienced in that community from my family and my love for learning and make actually education sexy? I said, this is the perfect market for me and the perfect genesis for where I want to do the rest of my life. So that community is chock full. Like, all I have to do is really just think about some of the personalities, some of the things they did back in the day, some of the things we did. And I can write a book. It inspires me to write books, articles, speak like I'm speaking now, or do whatever I need to do with charisma because I feel like I'm in a unique situation because I don't have the wherewithal of going to jail or having those bad opportunities or bad choices I made that they had to grow from and learn from. I basically was like a spectator watching all this thing go on. And so for me, all I have to do really is just remember and do my own research and then write about it and then articulate it in ways that they would articulate it had they been in my shoes. So I speak for them in terms of where we're going in terms of the body work on charisma based on that experience and based on the experience of my family.
What's been the biggest impact that being reared in your neighborhood has had on your body of work?
You get an edge from that kind of environment because there again, like I said, we're not talking about people who they were scholars in their own right, street scholars, but not scholars in terms of academically. It's kind of like Run DMC. I took the beat off the street, put it on TV. I took the rap. I took the genesis of the philosophy and the psychology and the personalities and put it in the books and in tomes, if you will, and therefore articulate in ways by which they can articulate because they made different choices. And more importantly, I don't even think they will be that interested because they're just being themselves.